Hey guys, so this is the volca keys, and I've had it for a while, used it in combination with some of my other gear, and made a few videos about it. And predominantly, I've been using it through the MIDI input, uh, and using it as a synthesizer, generally controlled by the circuit tracks, which is back there. So, the other aspect to this device, which is the sequencer, I have not explored basically at all. So the goal here is kind of just to have a bit more of a look into its sequencing capabilities and see what we can come up with. So yeah, we're just kind of aiming to explore the sequencer a bit more, what it can do, um, and how this device can be used standalone as opposed to in combination with other gear. So I'm not going to focus on sound design too much here, but I will put something together just to as a basis to use while we're exploring this. We'll just throw something together. This isn't even half bad. We'll just go. Let's just make a bass just because I feel like that's a very easy thing to come up with a sequence for. I'm not used to using this keyboard. So we're going to go unison to get a bit of a detuned bass sound. So we've kind of got room there to move it into some more acid territory by bringing up the peak, but for now we can keep it pretty low key. So we'll use that as our sound for now. Now, let's just start by pressing play. Okay, there's nothing in there. That's probably a good thing. So there are 8 memory slots here, 1 through 8, and I believe you just press memory. Yes, you press memory, load up a pattern. Let's just go back to this sequence 1. Now, my thing about this, the reason why I wanted to look into this a little bit, is because of all these keyboard controls. Now, from about here to here, it's pretty self-explanatory. You've got, obviously, in memory mode, you're just using these 8 to access memory, like, patterns, basically. But then, on the bottom, you've got all your function keys. So you've got motion sequencing, which I haven't really messed with, but it's easy to understand what that is because it would be similar to other devices where it's just tweak a knob while it's recording and that movement will be recorded. You've got your LFO settings, which I use all the time. That's an essential part. That's nothing to do with the sequencer. Tempo is just division of the tempo, simple. And the metronome is pretty self-explanatory. Now, the other aspects over here are what I struggle to understand a little bit. So, step trigger, I think tempo delay just means that the delay that's built into the device will be synced with the tempo, but even that I don't know. Flux, I know what it does. It's kind of like micro steps on the circuit tracks where it basically opens you up to a higher level of precision within your patterns. But it's not like you can zoom in and edit things because it's only live recording on this device. So it kind of enables you to slow down the tempo, turn on flux, and then kind of end up with a longer pattern. It's kind of just an odd word choice for smaller subdivisions. And then we have the active step. Oh. These are obviously to do with clearing, but I don't know what it means by active step. I think that's what act step means. there's a lot of I don't knows happening here. So we're going to start with the simple stuff and just record in a sequence. So but this is what confuses me. While it's playing, there's like, it's doing that, and that's the step trigger thing, and I only know that because every single time I try and use this in a setup, I have to turn that off. So we'll turn that off. I mean, that's cool, actually. That is somewhat useful. Makes it easy to just... But it's... it feels a little bit gimmicky, to be honest. But we'll just try and record something in. So we'll turn the metronome on. And just play something in. Did I leave step trigger on? Yes, I did. Let's turn that off. It kind of seems like there's some motion sequencing. Well, I just don't know why that first note is so weird. So I'm just going to clear any motion sequencing. And I don't know if my finger was covering it, but that button flashed when I did that. It's still going. Just turn it off. So I'm guessing that was some artifact of motion sequencing. Something was being sequenced and it was causing that to happen. But we've got a sequence now, so that's cool. Okay, so I've used the active step feature, which you get to by pressing function play. You get to select basically whether any one step is active. And I believe this is what you use to create different lengths of patterns. So say you wanted to do something in 3/4, you would turn these off, you've basically got a bar of 3/4, whatever you're doing, right? Shorten it down to 1 beat, 1/16. Right? That should be playing every time it flashes, and it's only playing every so often, which shouldn't even be possible. So what is causing this to happen? Okay, so I'm an idiot. The issue was that the LFO was in SAW mode, affecting the cutoff, basically acting as a secondary envelope. But because it was looping, it meant that some notes would hit at the bottom of the cycle and you just wouldn't hear it because the LFO was bringing a cutoff so far down that it was just inaudible. But we've got a sequence now. And just to set some context, well, another feature we can try and utilize is the motion sequencing. So let's try and do some of that. So we'll turn it on. Put it on smooth, but also we're going to clear it, which hopefully there's none in there currently. And we're just going to move the cutoff around. So that captured that and did it on its own. It also automatically stops recording at the end of the bar, which I actually really like, because so often if I'm using one hand to tweak the knob and I try and reach over to turn off the recording, during that time where I'm reaching, it's still recording no movement. So if I'm trying to make something that's moving around a lot in a particular way, that time where I'm moving my hand over is being recorded as static, which might not be, you know, what I want to do. So I actually really appreciate that. Anyway, it's probably not my best work, but we do have motion recording going on, which is cool. But say we want to redo it, we can just go in there, and that's a bit more subtle, create a few accents. With a kick going on under that, we've got a good foundation there. Wicked. We also mixed up some of the decay and release time. So you get some long notes and some short ones. Basically, we're creating some accents using some of these features by automating some of the knobs. So, the last couple of things we can do: step trigger, tempo delay, flux, and these clearing things. When I say things we can do, I'm really just meaning things I don't understand. So, beginning with step trigger, if we turn that on, I'm just going to record in an extra note that's a bit longer and see. So that extra note there is being impacted by the step trigger. But I'm curious, the order of this. So if I turn step trigger off. Yeah, so step trigger occurs on top of the sequence. So I was thinking maybe the step triggering gets recorded into the sequence, and that could be cool for quickly creating a rolling bass line and then adding something else over the top if you're in the poly mode, for example. But rather than that, your sequence is its own thing at the bottom layer, and then step trigger is applied on top of it, which is cool. It could go either way. There's pros and cons of both, really. But you could have something slow and then, bring in something else from another instrument, and at the same time turn the step trigger on and get a bit more of a rolling bass line type of thing to build up some energy. So I want to look at the tempo delay and flux, and I think it's probably better if I move to a different pattern for these, just to test out the memory writing. So function and write to record this, and we'll just go into slot 1. It flashes, it's done. Now we can go into a different slot, hear this thing from before, move back to this, and we're still there. Awesome. So now let's go into our second slot, which is empty. We're gonna just make a quick new patch, and when I say that, I'm just going to turn all the knobs down and then start creating something. So we'll... Cool, so that's our patch. It's kind of a super saw kind of thing. It's in the 5th mode with some detune. So we'll use the flux mode to try and record in something. So we're going to go to quarter tempo, turn on flux and a metronome. See what we've got. Now I just want to record faster than the metronome is going, just playing a bunch of stuff quickly and see how much of that it will keep. So we'll do that in a second. Now, my playing is a mess because this is not even a keyboard, but as a proof of concept, it did keep something. It is obviously very, very difficult to do properly, but it is keeping something there. I don't really know if I'm going to be able to create something that's actually musical with this, because it's almost impossible to play accurately that fast on this thing. But I think this is the type of thing that you could use a MIDI controller to record into the sequencer. I assume that is possible to record into the sequencer with a MIDI controller, but I don't know. While I was doing that, I also worked out what these two buttons do. I'm going to go into the other pattern to showcase this. So this is my bass patch. The sound I've got now is obviously a bit different, but you can hear it. Obviously, the clear all button it clears everything, it just clears out the pattern. But the clear active step button So we've got some active steps selected, and I'm just in this base pattern from before to show this. So we just do the first 8 steps, which is that many. Now we're just looping that first bit, that sliding in part of the pattern. Let's say we were doing a build. Okay, well that's probably... Let's say we kept that bit. And we were trying to build it up and create something, and we wanted to shorten it even further to just this. I'm really confused what's going on here, why it's shortening like that. Like why, like this, these 2 steps are playing something, but then either individual one of them doesn't play anything. And I don't even have flux turned on, so I don't understand how it's recorded something in between the 2 steps. But anyway, the point, I was going to try and demonstrate it, it's not going to work. But the point is, say you've prepared this build up, you've got this thing going, and then you clear the active step and drop back into the full pattern. So obviously one application of this is just, it's a quick way to clear the fact that you've turned on some active steps. You just clear it, put it back to normal. But also obviously it could be useful for creating a shortening of the pattern to build up to something and then drop back into the full length pattern, to drop into a chorus or whatever. Now the only thing left to look at / experiment with is the tempo delay feature. So I'm going to go back to an empty pattern. We get this. So obviously to work out whether it does what I think it does, we're going to turn the delay on. Now it's actually quite in sync at the moment. Now if I turn it on, so I'm pretty sure what it's doing is just, rather than free access to any time you might like, it turns it into a stepped selector between different subdivisions, which is kind of what I thought it would do. It's pretty simple. Wow, so all of the features in this are actually pretty simple and self-explanatory. It's just, the main thing that was throwing me off was the step trigger thing, because it happens on its own when I'm trying to use it with the circuit tracks, and I didn't understand it. And then also the flux, which even though I sort of knew what it was, it's just a weird name for it and it never actually used it. It's pretty self-explanatory. All I really wanted to do was just mess around with the sequencer and see sort of how powerful it is. It's pretty much what you expect on a, like, it's one synth voice. It's not going to be able to sequence, well, obviously you're not going to be able to sequence anything more than one synth voice with it. But for what it is, if you're operating in a setup where, you've got multiple separate devices, each with their own sequencer, this one is pretty powerful for what it is. It has access to quite a lot of features to create some cool patterns within the one device, obviously. And when you combine it with other things using the sync ports or MIDI sync, even if you're not controlling it with a MIDI controller, you could get some really cool patterns out of it. So, yeah, that's all this really was, kind of just more of a laid-back, exploring type of video. But I think that was cool. Came up with some cool stuff, and it got some, helpful information out of it, really. Like, just understanding a little bit more how this thing works. Hopefully you enjoyed the slightly more laid back type of thing here. Exploring these kind of things with this gear is, something obviously that I have to do in order to learn the gear I have. But I feel like doing it in a video could be cool. It shows you guys, it kind of shows a bit more of the actual experience of learning and using any particular piece of equipment, which I think is cool. That's the kind of thing I look for on YouTube when I'm trying to research something I'm considering buying, is people just actually using it and showing the features without trying to sell it to you. So that's kind of what I'm aiming to do here. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. If you want to see more of this kind of exploring kind of videos. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.